I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, the first day of the Republican National Convention was not what I expected.
What is sickening is that Amazon has abandoned any national allegiance.
Plus, it took 25 days, but State Senator Manka Dhingra, also a candidate for Attorney General, has finally given up her grift. Plus, Washington's ferry system is an absolute disaster. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. A couple things to talk about with the first day of the Republican National Convention. Now officially, Donald Trump and his new vice presidential choice, Senator J.D. Vance, have been nominated by the Republican Party. Here's the moment where Washington State Republican Party Chair Jim Walsh awarded the state's 43 delegates to Donald Trump.
Washington, 43 delegates.
Madam Secretary, Washington State, the evergreen state, where the people support law enforcement by allowing them to pursue criminals, where the people support families and children by putting into law a parent's Bill of Rights, where the people reform taxes so that families and young people and small businesses can thrive. Washington State casts all of its 43 votes for the next president, the past president, Donald J. Trump.
I really loved how he factored in the initiatives that everyone pushed so hard for and included that as part of what he said. You know, it's interesting because I think if you're not from Washington State and you're listening to the chair of the Republican Party say, where people support the police, they're probably like, do they? A lot of people support the police, yes. Enough people to get an initiative through and to fix some of our backward laws. But I loved that Jim included that. Kind of felt like everyone who supported the initiatives was also there, whether they support Donald Trump or not. So anyway, I'm watching the first day of the RNC. I'll save this for a little bit later. Oh, man, I thought they really screwed up on Trump's grand entrance. I know he's supposed to speak later in the week, but guy comes in with his, Band-Aid on his ear, and I just thought you could have made it so much bigger and powerful. So anyway, I'll rant about that later. But I sat on my couch watching the first night, and I was so confused. I was so confused. There were a lot of speakers and moments that I just thought, am I watching the RNC or am I watching something else? For example, I did not have far left talking points on my RNC bingo card.
Against gigantic multinational corporation, an individual worker has zero power. It's only when Americans band together in democratic unions that we win real improvements on wages, benefits, and working conditions. Companies like Amazon are bigger than most national economies. Amazon is valued over $2 trillion. That makes it the 14th largest economy in the world. What is sickening is that Amazon has abandoned any national allegiance. Amazon's sole focus is on lining its own pockets.
Was that Shama Sawant speaking at the RNC? I swear, you could have had Shama Sawant saying those exact same words, but that was Sean O'Brien. He's the Teamsters boss. He's general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. They have more than, I think, 1 million members nationwide, so very influential. The interesting thing about this, because I do not know how I feel about it. I was sitting there and I was listening to him and I'm like, wait, am I a socialist? Wait, am I pro-union? It was like he was making me really rethink the Teamsters and unions. And so I want to dive into some of this. So I started, he gets up there and speaks, and I kind of understood, I knew he was gonna speak, and I understood the historical importance of it because, Teamsters have been around for more than 100 years. They've never been invited to speak at the RNC because it's kind of like, well, unions, Democrats, they go together. Well, not this year. And I think that this reflects maybe not a substantial shift, certainly not in the Republican Party or in unions and their alignment with Democrats. But to me, this sent a message, or should have sent a message loud and clear to the Democratic Party, that you're even starting to lose the union workers. You're starting to lose the Teamsters. So Sean O'Brien spoke about why he's there.
I travel all across this country and meet with my members every week. You know what I see? An American worker being taken for granted. Workers being sold out to big banks, big tech, corporates, and the elite. And I'm not the only one who sees this. Everyday families see it. The American people aren't stupid. They know the system is broken. We all know how Washington is run. Working people have no chance of winning this fight. That's why I'm here today. Because I refuse to keep doing the same things my predecessors did. Today, the Teamsters are here to say we are not beholden to anyone or any party. We will create an agenda and work with a bipartisan coalition ready to accomplish something real for the American worker. And I don't care about getting criticized. It's an honor to be the first Teamster in our 121-year history to address the Republican National Convention.
So I start off being like, why is this guy invited? I'm not sure that he's going to have some of the talking points that Republicans want to hear. And then he starts talking, and I'm like, this is perfect. This is genius. You know, here you have a guy who, you know, is the voice of a critical voting bloc in America, a voting bloc that people have thought is beholden to the Democratic Party. And he's basically saying, I'm here and I will do work with anyone. I will do anything to help the American worker. I mean, for Democrats, that's a nightmare scenario. And he went on to say that the Democratic Party, pro-unions groups were livid that he had accepted the invitation to go speak.
To be frank, when President Trump invited me to speak at this convention, there was political unrest on the left and on the right. Hard to believe. Anti-union groups demanded the president rescind his invitation. The left called me a traitor. And this is precisely why it's so important for me to be here today.
What is going on? Do I love him? I just couldn't even believe it. So it was interesting because during this speech, I went through moments of like, this is genuinely awkward. And then moments of thought and saying, okay, there's a lot of areas where the Teamsters could find allies in the Republican Party. For instance, something Donald Trump has talked a lot about, making sure that American workers come first, that American workers are prioritized.
We need trade policies that put American workers first. It needs to be easier for companies to remain in America.
So would you say that's America first? Would you say you're looking for America first policies, Sean O'Brien? And then, of course, he would devolve into these like anti-big business screeds, and that's when the room would get really quiet, like this one.
Massive companies like Amazon, Uber, Lyft, and Walmart take zero responsibilities for the workers they employ. These companies offer no real health insurance, no retirement benefits, no paid leave, relying on underfunded public assistance.
Yeah. So there's some things in there where I was like, I don't agree with that. We've talked about, for instance, some of the union efforts, the efforts to unionize at Starbucks locations where you've got Starbucks that pays well above the minimum wage, gives wonderful benefits to its baristas to try to get them into further education, pay for their education, training skills and all of that. So some of the anti-big business stuff is ridiculous. I mean, I've talked about it with Amazon in Seattle, the vilification, some of those talking points, like I said, I mean, they're borderline socialist talking points when you look at like Amazon and tax Amazon and that'll fix everything, when in reality it just ruins, devastates smaller businesses that support Amazon. It takes jobs out of Seattle. I mean, now we're 10,000 plus high-paying jobs that aren't in Seattle that are in Bellevue because of the anti-business animus. So I've never had such a roller coaster of emotions watching someone speak in my life than the Teamsters boss, Sean O'Brien. But there's a couple of things I love about this. The Democrats would never allow something like that at the DNC. You will not see that at the DNC. For better or worse, you will not see them give a platform to someone who will stand up and clearly gives no F's about if he offends anyone in the room and disagrees with them on 50% of things. You will not see that level of dissent being allowed a microphone at the DNC. Absolutely not. So I love that. I love that he's there saying, you know, we don't agree on everything. I got flack for being here, but I don't care if I get criticism because my job is to do something for the American worker. And I see these areas where Republicans can help us do something for the American worker, whether it's on trade policy, XYZ, keeping American jobs in the United States. So I love that because Donald Trump personally allowed him to be there. I love that. I love that you're saying you see an opportunity there where Teamsters feel left behind by Democrats. So you're saying, okay, we might not get all the Teamsters, but let's show them that we also want to help American workers. Let's give Sean O'Brien a platform. Will we have to sit there for a couple minutes and listen to them rant about big businesses? Sure. But I thought he was great. I thought he was a great speaker. There was one moment which was fantastic where he said, because he wasn't there endorsing Donald Trump. And Sean O'Brien hasn't endorsed Donald Trump, but he called him one tough SOB, and the crowd just loved that. So he gave them what they needed, kind of the red meat they needed, fit in all his talking points. And I don't know if the content of his speech had to be approved. I can't imagine that a lot of what he said was approved, but it was a wild moment to watch. And then I was like, am I a socialist? What's happening? I'm all over the place lately. So anyway, that was an interesting moment. I'll talk about another speaker I just loved coming up later on in the show, Amber Rose, who also really, really surprised me. First, we were going to discuss this on the show yesterday, but obviously there were some other things afoot that we need to talk about. On Sundays with Subscribers this week, we had yet another win. We need to take opportunities to celebrate the little wins we have on building up team common sense, building up team sanity. Remember, we've been encouraging people from coaches to parents to teachers, to politicians, to speak out about the participation of biological boys and men in girls and women's sports. And the Kennewick School District did something that on its surface might not seem super meaningful or significant, but it truly is. So they did a proclamation, it was a resolution, supporting fairness in competition and student safety. Basically saying, like, as a school district, we know we can't change the rules. This is a state thing. But on the record, they wanted to say, the Kennewick School District Board of Directors strongly supports fairness in competition and student safety. The Kennewick School District Board of Directors strongly affirms that sex is defined as biological male or biological female as determined at birth and is an immutable characteristic that cannot be changed, fluid, or altered. And they wanted to say finally that the Kennewick School District Board of Directors strongly affirms that biological males should not participate in biological female sports, and inherent biological differences and abilities exist between biological males and biological females, and that the board commits to protecting female sports. I think putting out a proclamation like that, taking a position, and they passed it, taking a position as a school district, sending a message to the WIAA, the state of Washington, is incredibly meaningful. On Sundays with Subscribers, we had both the president and the vice president of the Kennewick School Board join us to discuss.
The start of all this came from our track coach. She put together a bunch of information back in April and said, hey guys, I want to share this with you. As you know, right now, our fastest boy would be a state record holder in every event, and that's just from our conference. And I think that just kind of got us thinking about it. And then you always hear people say, oh, it'll never happen to you guys. You'll never see it happen. And then it happens. And we have a boy win a state title in a female race. And not only did that female come in second, right, because she lost the title to this boy, the team came in second. So this boy's win affected the individual race and the team race. And so that just added some urgency to say, okay, let's get this done. Let's come out, let's take a stand and see if we can affect change in the state through WIAA, the state legislators, whoever. But someone has to take a stand to get the ball rolling, and that's what we did.
100%. And we've talked about this on the show all the time. And, I'm so happy to hear that a coach took a stand, because I know that's hard, right? In fact, I think down in Oregon, a state title holder there was also a biological boy in a girl's thing. And the teacher or the coach who spoke out about it doesn't have his job anymore. So that can be a really precarious thing to do. Micah, it's a different political environment in Kennewick, certainly than Seattle. I don't know that you'd see this in the Seattle Public School District. So could you characterize the support for what you guys are doing and what the coach is pushing for in the school district?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, you're always going to have a very small radical group who's against you, but really far and away, the support has been extremely, extremely positive, like floods of emails, school districts from across the state, parents, just emailing into the school board. We've had support not just from like big kids, but from families and from political leaders and from really all the way across the spectrum. So it's been really, really cool. And, there was a poll that about 70% of America agreed with the stand that we took. And so I think that this is not just a Republican Democrat issue. As a matter of fact, when that boy won the state title, he got more boos. One of our school board members was actually there, and he got more boos than cheers. And so I think just overall, people are not really happy with it. Think about it, Brandi. The fastest girl in the state, regardless of school size, took second in state.
Yep.
That's not cool. That's not fair to that girl, to all those teams, and as a domino effect, as Gabe mentioned, that team who would have placed much lower jumped to first place. Then the domino happens, right? A bunch of girls teams that would have got first now got second and third and fourth, and that's not fair. And then in other sports specifically, it's not safe either.
Yeah, and this is how it starts. People speaking out, making small statements that turn into bigger statements. If you want to watch that full interview with the Kennewick School Board president and vice president, it was this past Sunday on Sundays with subscribers. You can sign up to become a subscriber, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. And I love it. I love that their whole idea to push back started with a coach who's frustrated. They should be frustrated. Every coach of girls in the school districts in Washington should be frustrated with what's going on. They might be able to ignore it until it's one of their star athletes that's beaten by someone who biologically there's no way for them to compete with. And so they said, they're trying to figure out what they can do next. I asked them, do you think you guys have athletes in your school district who are ready and willing to dip out of competitions? And they said they think that there are. And I hate to ask that of athletes who, especially, in the last couple of years of school, and if they're the best athletes in the state. So that's a decision that they have to make with their parents to do what's right. But we're talking about an issue here that this is one of the fights of our generation, this whole issue around gender ideology. And so and we'll be on the right side of it. I don't know if it's going to be 5 years or 10 years or 20 years where people realize that, but you have to decide what part you're going to play in it now. And if you want to be a part of this moment in history and trying to put things on the right path. And so I give so much credit to the Kennewick School Board, the 3 members at least who voted in favor of this, for just putting their stake in the sand and saying the Kennewick School Board does not support this. We're going to work to try to fix it. But for now, the Kennewick School Board wants everyone to know that we do not support what's happening to female athletes. So check out that interview, undividedpod.com. All right. If you're in the market to sell your home, our friend Wes Jones with sellwithwes.com. He joins us occasionally to talk about the state of the real estate market. And Nicole, do we have our latest with Wes in here? Yeah, we just had Wes in to update on things because we asked him, we haven't seen rate cuts like the Fed had forecast, and, they've since walked that back. And so we asked Wes, how do you think things are going to go for home sellers between now and the end of the year?
King County, median $1 million. Homes are still selling very, very quickly. If you want to do something this year, give me a call. I'd love to start the process now. I think that things will be moving very swiftly through probably October. And then as the election starts to come out, get closer, people always pump the brakes. But for all of you who are out there that are thinking like, oh, I can't sell my home because I need X amount, you're probably at the peak right now. It's probably worth more than it's ever been than previous times. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, what are you waiting for? So reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. He and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure that you get the most possible eyeballs on your listings so you can get the best possible offers. You can start by using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Washington State's ferry system is an absolute disaster. And we knew this, right? It has been a disaster for some time, and there are a couple elements we'll discuss that are making that worse. But I'll tell you what, now that Nicole and I have personally suffered through the horror of trying to get somewhere on a Washington State ferry, we're going to talk about it. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So we are going to a wedding this past weekend on Friday Harbor and Roche Harbor, I guess. I guess they're very different. Sorry. And, I've been on this ferry route before, but it's been many, many years. And of course, there are a bunch of other people going to the wedding who made reservations on the ferry in Anacortes. And Nicole had to get in. How early did you have to try? Because this was one of the big concerns, right? With having a wedding on the island was that, is the ferry system going to be reliable? There were people from other states there. So I just want to talk to illustrate how big of a cluster this is. What was your process for trying to get us a reservation to bring a car on the ferry?
So just to get the reservation, so they hand them out in different sections,
like
I guess,
batches,
or
release
batches.
different.
So they probably were on sale months ago, but I missed it then. So a couple months ago I checked, they were full. So then it says they're gonna at 7 a.m. exactly 2 weeks before your ferry, then you can get on and try to get a reservation. So I did that, and I got our trip going there,
right,
7 a.m. 2 weeks before.
You had to book
Thursday.
it at that time, yeah.
But let me tell you, the website is slow because there are so many people fighting to get reservations. And Jessamine, whose wedding we were going to, was trying to get one for her hair lady or something like that, and she could not get one. Like it booked up. So if you miss this 2 week advance, then you have to go to the 2 day advance. And so for us, I didn't get the return trip on the 2 week one. So then on the two days before the return trip, I had to get on 7 a.m. and go through this process that, it takes a good 15 minutes to get your tickets because the website goes so slow.
So it's an ordeal. It's an
ordeal
crazy to get a reservation, but without a reservation, you already know that you're screwed. Because our ferry system is unreliable, you'll have boats out of service, you'll have boats that don't have crew members. So Nicole is like up. And 2 weeks in advance to get somewhere on a ferry, that's the highway system for our islands. That's a lot of time in advance to do that, go through it, get our spot in line. So we go with plenty of time. We're going to get there an hour and a half before our ferry. We're on the 12:05 p.m. ferry. So we're up early. Mike and I leave. We pick up Nicole. We do all this, drive all the way to Anacortes, and we start to get some messages, including from one of our unDivided subscribers who was also on his way, him and his family, to Friday Harbor from Anacortes, saying that they'd been there. I think it was like maybe at 4 a.m. sailing canceled, 6:15 a.m. Maybe that was it. And then all of them basically telling us no boat has left yet today. And we're coming there and we're booked on the 4th boat of the day, yet no boat had left yet.
Nope.
So we also know that the bride and the groom were supposed to be on the earliest ferry that day, and they haven't moved. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a disaster. So here we are, me, Nicole, our friend Bavisha. We're in the back of my husband's truck getting wedding stuff done. We're doing place cards and trying to make the most of the situation. It's hot, and there's families, and they've got kids, and they're trying to, keep their kids occupied. People had been there by the time we got there for 6 hours. for 6 hours. So we get there 10:30, our boat's at 12:05. We didn't leave and actually get on a ferry until 3:34 p.m. Okay? All the while, we're monitoring the Washington State ferry, notifications and all this. And they posted, this is the day we went out, we're having a difficult morning on our Anacortes San Juan Islands route. The Yakima and Samish are out until further notice with mechanical issues. The Tillicum is out as we work to get a crew to Friday Harbor using the one boat in service. We're going to restore service when we can. We're working on it. We'll post updates. And then they're posting update after update about this is canceled, this is canceled, this is canceled, this is canceled, this is canceled. It was insane. And I know some of you are screaming at me like, Brandi, I deal with this every day. That's insane. This isn't just about, like, a wedding's pretty important, but this isn't like, oh, I'm going on a Saturday and I'm going to go, be a tourist on an island, and if I miss it, no big deal. People can't leave the islands without these things. Imagine having somewhere to be, a medical appointment, and it's 6.5 hours later, and you made a reservation to be on a ferry months or weeks in advance. It's an absolute disaster. So we ended up taking all the stuff out of our truck when finally there was a ferry that was going to leave for the day. Getting on, walking on, and then just hoping and praying that my husband, because he's like, I'll stay behind with the truck. I'll just wait here with the truck. So it's funny, he wouldn't let me show the video because, Mike. So we're all standing on the ferry thing and we're just waiting. Will his car get on? Will his car get on? And he was like one of the last cars on. And we're like, oh my gosh.
It was crazy.
It was an absolute disaster. And I'm going to get into, this isn't just a woe is us segment. I want to get into some of the issues at play here. But what it did for us is, I think, open our eyes to truly how bad the ferry system has become.
Oh, unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's unreliable. Mm-hmm. We would never accept it if it was a major highway that was shut down with an unknown open time repeatedly and routinely. Would we ever accept when they close I-5 and don't, or when they close I-90 and don't open up 520 without tolling? People melt down, right? And in Seattle, this is the same thing. Because what is the option, right? Okay, well, we were thinking, do we try to get a plane over? Do we try to get a private boat to take us over? What are the other options? And all those things, of course, cost lots of money. And so if you're just trying to go about your life and you live on one of these islands, you're not going to charter Kenmore Air every single time that you have to go somewhere. So it baffles me how people don't take this more seriously. It's like shutting down I-5. It's like shutting down 405 and just saying, well, this is just the way it is. It got so bad, Washington State Ferries tweeted this out. And this was a couple days after what happened to us, because it wasn't just that ferry route. Bainbridge Island, all other ferries suffering as well. They said, we know it's been difficult for many customers navigating our service disruptions. Please do not take frustration out on our frontline employees, though, as they're trying to get as many people to their destinations safely. And I agree with that. Don't be mean to the ferry workers. The ferry workers were trying very hard to keep us informed. Just do what I did. Get on the ferry and start yelling, thanks, Jay Inslee. Thanks, Jay Inslee. And telling people, you voted for this. No, I didn't do that. But I wanted to. Because this stuff, in my estimation, a lot of this is preventable. There was the Orcasonian. I love that. Is it like the Orcas Island newspaper?
I believe so.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So here's how they covered this. Washington State Ferries canceled 1,145 sailings this summer, with an outsized impact on the San Juans. 1,145 sailings just this summer canceled so far. That's insane. They said data from the state shows during this year's summer season, 1 out of every 20 sailings to or between the islands was canceled. That's more than a third of the 1,145 cancellations statewide, when San Juan ferry routes made up less than a fifth of overall scheduled sailings. Washington State Ferries is down several boats due to some planned and unplanned maintenance. There are 15 vessels currently sailing. That's the minimum needed to run reduced service, according to the director at the agency. They're also facing the same maritime labor shortage other states and nations are. Some workers have held off on their retirement. Others have foregone vacation or days off to fill in. That's the kind version of what's happening. Mm-hmm. That is the kind version of what's happening. What isn't talked about enough are, so you have the two elements, right? Because one of our boats was canceled because they did not have enough crew. So they sent a boat to a different island to pick up crew, to bring them back to run the ferry, which is insane. There has not been enough accountability for the people fired over the vaccine mandate. At this stage, whether you agreed with the vaccine mandate or not, right? Like, let's put that aside. That is so far in the rearview mirror. There's no reason that at the time that it was put down, when we knew it wasn't going to be the path out of the pandemic, that you would sacrifice the ability of people to move around the state freely and the negligible, if any, impact of those ferry workers not being vaccinated. Even my friend Dave Ross, who's a very liberal commentator in the Seattle market, said this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And of course, even if you were going to beg them on your hands and knees to take their jobs back, why would you take a job back if you were a lifelong, dedicated state employee working on the ferry system and they fired you just like that? Would you want your job back? I wouldn't go back to work. So there has not been enough accountability or acknowledgement, I think, from the governor's office and from the ferry system and the Department of Transportation about the true impact that has had on a lot of people and on the labor shortage. It's truly ridiculous, and there's no excuse for it at this point. And then the other thing is the push to electrify our ferry fleet. So there's a lot of things that the state has known. This just goes down to mismanagement, government bureaucracy. You have an aging ferry staff population where you knew, and you can look ahead and see, when are they going to age out? When are they going to hit retirement age? And they knew all of that and still fired people over the vaccine mandate, which is wild because you foresaw a crisis, and then you made a decision to make that crisis worse before we even got to crisis stages. So there's that element of it. But then you have Governor Inslee, who says we want to electrify the ferry fleet, and he will not turn away from that effort. Even what I think is fascinating about that, every leading candidate in the race for governor, including Bob Ferguson, has said, no, we need to get more diesel ferries in the mix. We need to just keep going on those. We need to push them through because we need more ferries. And this electrification thing has taken way longer. They have all these specs about, we want to build it, in the United States, which I can appreciate. But honestly, if it's between building an electric ferry in the United States or building it wherever the hell they'll build it and make it diesel, it's just about what can get on the water faster at this point. Because this is not tenable. The situation is not tenable. And you have Inslee, who will push these climate goals and his climate agenda at any cost. It doesn't matter to him. We talk about it with the Climate Commitment Act. He will not acknowledge to the extent to which it's raising gas prices, and he doesn't care because he wants to push the CCA. So any of the negative implications of the CCA, that's not his concern. Governor Inslee was responsible for 1589, which was pushed through at 2 a.m., which helps PSE move away from natural gas. The governor doesn't care. He never once has addressed the fact that it could cost a working class family, a regular homeowner, $40,000 to electrify their home if they take away natural gas service. He doesn't care. And with the ferry boat electrification, he does not care if people are stranded for 6.5 hours or more on an island that they can't get off of without that ferry boat. And I'm all for preserving the environment, protecting the environment, doing what we can to be thoughtful of the environment, but within reason. Having a framework ready to go, hey, we're going to do these ferry boats, we're not going to pull any others out of service. We're going to make sure we're going to do it simultaneously at the same time. We're going to keep the ferries up and running, doing all these things. And when we feel like we're ready and it's not going to impact service, we'll make the switch. All of this is common sense. You do not push your climate policy on the backs of working class people, at the expense of working class people, at the expense of people on an island who are literally trapped if they cannot rely on the ferry system. This is really basic stuff. And so, I don't know if I have a lot of faith in the next governor, regardless of who it is, to be able to unwind this mess. This is a mess that has been years in the making. You don't get to, how many cancellations was it this summer so far? More than 1,000 cancellations. You don't get to that place overnight, and we're not going to be able to fix it overnight. But we have to focus first on what makes good common sense. Firing ferry workers over a vaccine when we already have a worker shortage, that doesn't make good sense. The cost benefit doesn't make any sense. Wanting to electrify and go green on the ferries, even though we don't even know if that's going to be successful. We want to do it, but it doesn't make good sense. There's too many things. There's too many people that will be hurt if we focus on this at any cost for any reason or for no reason at all. So that was our experience on the ferry. I'm dying to hear some of your experiences on the ferries and how that has gone for you, because it's not tenable. I feel horrible for the people who are living on the islands. And voting the same way, if you continue to vote the same way, I'm just going to say it.
Which the people on the island do.
If you continue to vote the same way, nothing's going to change. So you vote how you want to vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. But when you rely on the ferry system, putting people in office who want to continue the policies of the current administration, that's not going to get you out of that situation. It's going to make it much worse. So that's the advice I'm going to leave you with.
Maybe it's by design. They don't want us coming to visit.
That's possible. Maybe they're like, hey, we don't want to get off the island and we don't want you on the island.
Exactly.
So, man, but Friday Harbor and Roche Harbor are beautiful. I would swim there if I had to because they're gorgeous.
They are beautiful.
We just want you guys to be able to get where you're going, okay?
It was surprising how many people are still wearing masks over there.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's a different world, for sure. All right, that segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. I have encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge, speaking about costs on working class people. You need insurance, right? So don't deal with your insurance needs by yourself, especially not with the industry the way that it is. I mean, they're hiking rates left and right. They're dropping customers left and right. You need a good insurance broker in your corner to help you navigate this situation. Our friend Ben Bailey took the First Mark Challenge. He says he and his wife Leslie saved $1,500 a year by moving their policies over to policies handled through First Mark Insurance.
It's good to, just like you would go in for an annual physical with your primary care physician, you may not have anything wrong, but it's good just to kind of have that, annual check-in. And I think that's what First Mark, the service and the value that they really provide is it helps. It helps you have an understanding of your coverage.
Yeah, so firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The First Mark Challenge is completely free, so they'll go over your current insurance, talk about your insurance needs with you a little bit, and then you can decide whether you want to move your policies over to policies handled through First Mark. I'm a member of the First Mark family. Nicole's a member of the First Mark family. The Undivided podcast gets our business insurance through the First Mark family. So we are not talking to you about something that we're not using ourselves. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. They work for you. 25 days. 25 days. It took Manka Dhingra 25 days to finally let go of her lie about being a prosecutor. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. All right, I'm not going to rehash everything, but if you've been watching the show, you know that 25 days ago, we broke an exclusive story on this show that State Senator Manka Dhingra, who is a Democrat running for Attorney General, has been lying for years about being a King County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. She hasn't worked as one in any full-time capacity since 2017. She came back on a part-time basis for a few short months in 2019 and 2021, basically in 2021 during COVID to help with some systems that she was more familiar with. She hasn't worked there in several years, yet she's out on the campaign trail saying she's a senior deputy prosecuting attorney with King County. So we end up speaking to King County. HR says she doesn't work here. She's not on a leave of absence. So we call Manka Dhingra out for lying. She doesn't update any of her bios. She doesn't update any of her campaign material. Tries to ignore it. Then a couple mainstream outlets jump in. Como News covered our story. The Seattle Times covered our story and a few others. Then she felt a little more pressure to, this is all a misunderstanding. I'm on a leave of absence. So I'll change it to, current prosecutor leave of absence, which also was a lie. The HR department at the prosecutor's office had told her a week before that in an email, you're not on a leave of absence. You don't work for us. Please stop saying you work for us and take it out of your election material. So she just doubled down with an even worse lie and just thought, well, I'll just see what happens from there. Well, then King 5 picked the story up. And I give some of the local stations credit for finally, I think it took them so long, but now not relenting and not saying no, you can't just change it to you're on a leave of absence. They say you're not. You're not on a leave of absence. So King 5 News, Drew Mickelson did a story that aired yesterday. The headline, AG candidate changes website bio after request from King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So they noted that yesterday Manka Dhingra did update at least most of her bios, social media to say former prosecutor, which is, as Nicole has said all along, what would the problem have been? Had you been out there calling yourself a former prosecutor, no one would have cared. So now she's like, okay, I got to let go of the grift. I'm going to tell the truth. But here's what gets me. For the love, she still cannot just admit that she was wrong and that she wasn't being truthful. She still cannot have any humility, like she has to blame other people for all of this. She told King 5 in a statement. I'm just going to read the full statement. This is a semantic issue about how to describe the open invitation I have to return to my career as a senior criminal prosecutor. We have used the term leave of absence as a descriptor of my 2-decade relationship with the office, not as a technical employment status. This distraction has been pushed by my opponents to diminish my career protecting families and communities. But I am still the only candidate in this race with the legal and legislative experience to stand up for the people of Washington. It's not, first of all, it's not a semantics issue. This has nothing to do with word choice. They said you're not on a leave, you don't work there. Yet you were saying you worked there, and then when you were caught, you said you were on a leave, and you just could not say, I don't work there anymore. And now you are saying that. So now we have gotten to the truth there. But that line, this distraction has been pushed by my opponents to diminish my career protecting families and communities. We did not speak, I can tell you definitively, we did not speak to her opponents as part of this story. We did not work with her opponents as part of this story. This story was not given to us by her opponents. We got a tip from concerned people within the prosecutor's office that she continued to go out there and claim she was like a working attorney with the prosecutor's office when she wasn't. So it is a lie, yet another lie, for her to claim that her opponents were pushing this. Now, I'm sure her opponents are happy about it. I'm sure her opponents love the story. I'm sure her opponents have shared the story. I am sure her opponents will use the story in the election, which they have every right to do. But I can tell you definitively on the record that neither of her opponents were our sources for this reporting. And frankly, we didn't even need any sources because all we had to do is ask the prosecutor's office, does she work there? And they said no. And then they asked her to stop saying she works there. So that's just the truth. We reported the truth. She doesn't like it. So now she's trying to blame it on someone else. True to form for Manka Dhingra. But yeah, now she says all of her bios say former 2-decade senior prosecuting attorney. She is a 2-decade former senior deputy prosecuting attorney. Like, I don't understand what her issue is. Just say that you were a longtime prosecutor with King County.
Or just former.
It's so easy.
Former. And then she still hasn't updated her Twitter, though.
Yeah, she's got some that she has yet to update. So I'm sure she's getting around to it. 25 days. Unbelievable. All right, really quickly, the mayor of Aberdeen, Washington, has been getting some pushback for a social media post he made after the former president was shot, basically saying that he thought Trump staged the whole thing, that maybe Trump cut his own ear, right? And I mean, his whole post made no sense. And he said in it that he thought it was the only thing that could happen that would artificially gain Trump sympathy votes. Says, I hope I'm wrong, but because of his record of deceit, that's the first thing that came to mind. So anyway, there has since been national coverage of what he said. We asked State GOP Chairman Jim Walsh when we had him on the show yesterday about his remarks, and he basically said he needs to take it back and he needs to reconsider his career in politics. So we reached out to Mayor Douglas Orr, the mayor of Aberdeen, Washington, and it seems like he's changed his tone a little bit. I don't know if it's sincere or if it's just because people have been very angry. I'm not going to read his whole statement, but he said, it was a knee-jerk post made in haste, and after some reflection, I removed the post. He said it was insensitive of me to make that kind of remark at the time. The fact that I felt what I did when I saw the news after the shooting also speaks to the never-ending string of venom and hate coming from the extremists in both political parties and their ardent followers on social media, because he'd also said that people were only attacking him because he's gay. What does that have to do with anything? I didn't even know he was gay. I didn't even know who he was. So how can I know you're gay if I don't know who you are? That makes no sense. He said, I made a mistake and I took steps to correct it. I'm certain that many of you have posted something in anger or an error that you later regretted. To err is human. To forgive is divine. He quoted that in there. Okay. I vowed to renew my efforts to remain positive, work with all sides to find middle ground, and take steps to improve our city. Fine. Douglas Orr, mayor of Aberdeen, you're forgiven.
Although I do like how he
holding a grudge.
pushes it on the media and everybody else for the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, and all of this craziness. He's like, see, it affected me too. Like, I'm angry because of the media.
No, you're an adult with control over your emotions. If you can't control your emotions, I don't know that you should be a mayor, right? If you're not capable of like rage tweeting about an assassination attempt, like maybe don't be in public office at all. So very interesting. Unbelievable, you might say. All right, let's get into some national news, shall we? Okay. So I don't know this. First of all, I'll talk about this tomorrow, but I'm going to lose my steak dinner bet with you and Daryl. I have until 1 p.m. Was it or noon? Noon. I have until noon tomorrow. Right before the show, for Biden to drop out of the presidential race, or else I have to take Daryl and Nicole for a steak dinner. Fine. It's not my fault. It's the assassins' fault.
Sure.
Because now I think Democrats are like, well, what good does it do to have Biden drop out? Because nobody's winning anyway. Nobody's beating Trump anyway. I'll talk more about the steak dinner. I think I should be let off of the bet.
Really?
Unforeseen circumstances. You guys let me know if I should be let off of the bet for having to buy Nicole and Daryl a steak dinner. I'm just saying unforeseen circumstances. But anyway, so Biden is out there still saying he's going to run. Now I have no reason not to believe him, but he's still talking. And I just think for Democrats, the last thing you should be doing to try to prove that Biden is coherent is having him talk, because that never goes well. And it didn't go well when he sat down with Lester Holt. And it's like, and it's not just anyone. This isn't like those radio hosts where the White House sent questions and then the radio host asked the exact questions. Like, that's a pretty low pressure interview. But Lester Holt, it's pretty high pressure interview for the president of the United States right now. So Biden got very testy with Lester Holt. Which, how could you get testy with Lester Holt? Lester Holt is one of those ones where you just
you
look at him and you're like, you're fine. Lester, I have lots of complaints about the network news, but you're fine. You're adorable. So anyway, he asked, we'll play a couple clips. He asked President Biden how he could have said after the debate, because he was asked, did you watch the debate back to see what people are talking about and their concerns? And he said he didn't know if he'd watched it back, which kind of proves the point. Here's that clip.
In your last TV interview, you were asked if you had watched the debate, and your answer was, I don't think so, no. Have you since seen it?
I've seen pieces of it. I've not watched the whole debate.
And the reason I ask, because I guess the question is, are you all on the same page? Are you seeing what they saw, which was moments of, frankly, that you appeared to be confused?
Lester, look, why don't you guys ever talk about the 28 lies he told? Where are you on this? Why didn't the press ever talk about that? 28 times it's confirmed he lied in that debate. I had a bad night. I wasn't feeling well at all. And I had been, I screwed up. But
I just asked the question because the idea that you may or may not have seen what some of these other folks have seen, you're not on the same.
I'd have to see. I was there. I'd have to see it. I was there. And by the way, seriously, you won't answer the question, but why didn't the press talk about all the lies he told?
Well,
I haven't read anything about that.
We have reported many of the issues that came up during that debate.
No, you haven't.
We'll provide you with them.
I love how where have you been? Why haven't you talked about that? And also the disconnect, first of all, he's the master of deflection, apparently. But the fact that he believes they haven't talked, like after the debate, they were talking just as much about the lies they said Trump told as they were Joe Biden's age issues. So the fact that he doesn't believe that the media has talked about, the media has been calling Trump a liar for like 8-9 years straight. So it also shows, and I want to play a couple more before I make this point. So Trump wants to debate Biden again, obviously. And Lester asked if he'd be open to an earlier debate than the second one they already have planned in September, I believe it is.
Mr. Trump has said he's giving you a chance to redeem yourself, basically the idea of engaging in another debate.
We're going to have another debate.
Yeah, you're going to have one in September that's on the books. Would you be open to doing one in the next few weeks?
I'm going to debate him when we agreed to debate, and I'm going to debate him in September.
But if the opportunity came up to do one between now and then, is there a sense of wanting to get back on the horse?
I'm on the horse. Where have you been? I've done 22 major events, met thousands of people, overwhelming crowds, a lot happening. I'm on the horse. What I'm doing is going out and demonstrating to the American people that I have command of all my faculties, that I don't need notes, I don't need teleprompter. I can go out and answer any questions at all.
I'm on the horse. Now, I do think Biden made a good point there. I think that was a good retort. If I was like giving Biden, media training or something, he makes a good point that he has been out there doing interviews. He did George Stephanopoulos, he did Lester Holt, he's been out at events. So I think that's a fair retort to say, whether I do a debate or not, I'm still out there and I have been doing events. But how touchy he is about being asked even mildly difficult questions by the corporate news media shows that there's an expectation, I think, among Democratic politicians that they're not going to be asked hard questions, that they're not going to be grilled. He's almost like offended that Lester Holt will be asking him like very reasonable kind of milquetoast questions that any politician should expect. And he's doing his whisper and he's like, I'm on the horse. Where are you at? Same with this, because it was after the attempted assassination on Trump. It was pointed out that a few days prior for a fundraising thing, Biden had made the comment that it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. So Lester asked him about that language.
You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say
words
crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing.
Yeah, I first of all, he gives his whole Oval Office address for 6.5 minutes saying lower the temperature. I already called him out yesterday saying he is preaching to all of us about lowering the temperature but hasn't taken any accountability for his actions. It would have been a home run had he told Americans, me too. That includes me too. I've said some things I regret. I'm going to change going forward. But then he sits down with Lester Holt. And that was a simple thing to say, I obviously should not have done that. And also to say, well, I meant to say crosshairs. Crosshairs wouldn't have been any better. That's the same thing. That's the same analogy, right? So I don't get it. I don't get why they keep trotting him out to do these high-profile interviews. If I were him, I would just hang tight. I would do my job to the extent that I could do it between now and January. I would take the L in November and just move on. I would just disappear, to be frank. All right, one more thing about the RNC yesterday. First, do you have video of the Trump coming out? I thought this was a missed opportunity. I didn't like the, it's Lee Greenwald, right? Greenwood. I like that song. I really wanted Donald Trump, you can play it. I wanted Trump to walk out to 50 Cent's Many Men, wish death upon me. I just thought it would be, given, I understand that at the conventions, it's typical for the presidential, nominee to like just make an appearance early on and then give their formal remarks later in the week. But given the fact that he was just shot, they really should have done more with it. He should have come out on stage. But you've got Greenwood.
Okay, I'm okay with the Greenwood song. I think that's kind of been his thing.
But he was just yapping in the background. Like Greenwood was just talking. I'm like, just sing the song. And he's yapping and adding this commentary. I'm like, no, just let him. It was so
moment.
Weird to me.
It needed a moment. It needed a bigger moment. I agree. But I got to say, I was distracted from all of that by Trump's face.
He looked,
because he seems so, like we were talking about, humble.
Very humbled.
Solemn, kind of just, and he smiled a lot. It looked like a very genuine smile that, like, grateful to be alive, I guess.
100. I noticed that too. And I was like, wow, he looks like glowy. Like he just sort of felt very glad to be there and glad to be alive. So I thought, and even CNN said that when they came out from it, is he looked genuinely like
happy to be alive.
I don't remember the word they used, but kind of happy to be alive and humbled. They should have also taken off the gauze. I think they should have let people
probably
see.
be off by Thursday,
I
so.
think they should have let people see what the guy did to his ear, because apparently he's missing a little bit of his ear. I don't know if they tried to sew it together, but I think they should have shown it. So anyway, I would like to talk to the event planner, because I would have made that entrance so much better. But Trump's face, the excitement of the crowd kind of made up for it. So it was an interesting moment. So I mentioned earlier there were a couple speakers at the RNC that I was like, this is wild. And kind of I changed my opinion about them before and after. So Amber Rose is one of them. Amber Rose, she's like a rapper, model. Maybe does she do OnlyFans or something?
I think
like,
rapper model is a good.
She's an odd choice for the RNC. So she was a never Trumper. Like, she despised Trump, said horrible things about Trump. And I think that's, for people in showbiz, that was kind of the fairly common thing. And she's a woman of color. At least I think she is.
Diverse. I think she's a little bit of everything she said. She said she has a very diverse background.
Gotcha. Okay. So she had like an epiphany on Trump, and now she's like wearing Trump MAGA hats and all this stuff. So they invited her, and some conservatives were really angry about it, because they're like, here's someone who's like, you know, half naked on social media all over the place, has said horrible things
Sometimes
about Trump. Naked. Yeah, full nudity. So like they're like, this isn't in keeping with conservative values. Amber Rose gave the best, most relatable, best delivered speech of the entire evening. I was absolutely floored. Here's part of it.
The first person I knew who supported Donald Trump was my father. I was shocked. My entire family is racially diverse, and I believed the left-wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. My father said, "No, he's not, Amber. What are you talking about?" And when I insisted, he said, "Prove it." So to prove my father wrong, I did my research and looked into all things Donald Trump. People have to do their research. I realized Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love. And that's when it hit me. These are my people. This is where I belong. My message to you tonight comes from a humble place. The left told me to hate Trump, and even worse, to hate the other side, the people who support him. When you cut through the lies, you realize the truth. American families were better when Donald Trump was president. We were safer, wealthier, and stronger. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote to put money back in our pockets and good food on our kids' plates. Or, as Trump would say, it's a vote to make America great again. Thank you so much.
I loved it. It was so sincere. It was so well delivered. And it was a story that I think it helps bring people in. I mean, her talking about like believing all these things about Donald Trump, doing her own research, and then she went and realized like, well, none of that's true. You know, the things that I had been told to believe that he's racist and he's horrible or whatever. And she found kind of a community in Donald Trump supporters. And, you know, that's not everyone's path to Donald Trump. That hasn't been my path to Donald Trump, certainly. But I just found it so well communicated. And you look at that clip, I mean, that clip's going to be out on social media all over the place. And you have someone like Amber Rose who has this immense social media following. And that is something that is going to help them bring people in, bring in new voters. And that's exactly, especially younger voters, that's especially what the Republican Party needs right now. So anyway, Amber Rose spoke. I did it on CNN at the time. And when they came off back to CNN, it was pretty clear that all the CNN hosts, even the anti-Trump ones, knew that like that was a really good speech.
So I looked it up, and then I called a friend of mine and I said, "Do you know who this is?" And they didn't know. Also a political person. But that's the point. They have put someone on the stage who reaches into this whole group of Americans who are not necessarily engaged at all in our politics or in our civics. These kinds of voices, I heard some grousing about this from some of the conservative. This is how you change the composition of the electorate.
Yeah, that was probably the most dangerous speak for the Democratic coalition. That is a young woman of color. She's describing the experience a lot of people have, feeling that maybe if you're around too many liberals, you might get criticized too much, or you might not be able to speak your mind. And she spoke to it really well. And she's way more famous than any of us up here. Yeah. I'm going to tell you that, way more famous. And so To the extent that these guys are trying to bust up our coalition, that was a bunker buster right there.
By the way, and it's one of the things we've been talking about, but there are speakers who speak to the room, and there are speakers who speak through the television screen. She speaks through the camera to the audience at home, not, I mean, she's effective in the room, but when you're yelling into the room, that is not communicating directly through the lens.
This person is super talented. Okay, like this person knows how to speak plainly and directly, knows how to use the camera, the cadence of it. They got something there.
Yeah, and it really is hard. In those big arenas, it's hard not to want to fill up the room. You want to scream to make sure the grandma in the back can hear you. But you're not talking to the 30,000 people there. You're talking to the 30 million people at home. And she was the most effective.
That's CNN on Amber Rose. And a conservative, the first guy who was talking, not Van Jones, he's one of their conservative commentators. I mean, I agree with everything they said. And I'm shocked about it. I really thought that was one of the first speakers that came up after Donald Trump came in the room, like 2 days after he was almost assassinated. And I'm like, they have Amber Rose, some rapper who's like not even like newly conservative, and that's one of the first speakers that's going to be up. What a weird, wasted moment. She absolutely nailed it. I think that the Trump campaign is going to use her a lot more moving forward. Brilliant. Brilliant. All right. We'll get to questions, comments, and our closing sanity check coming up next. First, I have encouraged you guys to do one of Zach Abraham's live webinars. Really helpful. A lot of information. Zach and his team at Bulwark Capital specialize in mitigating, managing your risk in retirement. So you've got your retirement plan. You know, you've been working hard. You've been saving hard. You know what you want your retirement to look like. But can your retirement look like that in today's inflationary environment? So that's what Zach's next webinar, it's coming up next week, in fact. Yeah, the 25th next week is about. It's about inflation. They call it the silent portfolio killer. Are you confident your retirement portfolio is protected against it? So you can join Zach for his special inflation webinar coming up next week, July 25th at 3:30 p.m. It's totally free to register. KnowYourRiskRadio.com, KnowYourRiskRadio.com. You'll also learn about how Bulwark Capital is always seeking to lower risk, lower cost, give you as much upside as possible. So don't miss the special inflation webinar, July 25th, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Totally free to sign up. KnowYourRiskRadio.com, KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24244. Go to KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Okay, I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll about some of the speeches if you watched the first day of the RNC. I was curious whether you guys were as surprised as I was about some of the choices that they made. On Patreon, Locals, and X, in our daily show poll, I said, which speaker seemed the most out of place on the first night of the Republican National Convention? Amber Rose, the Teamsters boss, Sean O'Brien, Charlie Kirk, or none of the above. The reason I included Charlie Kirk is because, you know, he has been at odds at some points with Republicans. He's been accused of anti-Semitism. And so I just didn't know if they were willing to dabble into that kind of controversy so early in the RNC. They gave him a pretty prominent speaking position, though. Let's see. On Patreon, 43% are saying Teamsters boss Sean O'Brien seemed the most out of place. Let me see here. But Megan says, I just happened on Amber Rose's clip yesterday on YouTube. Her story is similar to my story. My dad was the first Trump supporter that I knew. I thought he was crazy at the time, but I came around to his thinking on my own. I related to her story and believe many others will too. It has been a journey for many to embrace Trump as the best candidate. It's funny. I got a lot of people saying, I didn't watch because I subscribed to you, so you'll watch and then tell us about what happened. Lucas said, I selected none of the above because I didn't watch, but I wanted to see the results of your poll. Come on, guys. Let me see. Larry said, I saw Amber Rose. I don't know who Amber Rose is. I also saw Sean O'Brien with the Teamsters, and I could feel the tension in the room. Towards the end of it, when he was really going hard on Amazon and Walmart and big business, it was pretty quiet in that room full of people. And then other points, he really got the crowd into it and he cheered, and I thought it was really great. Let me see here. Kathleen, Teamsters union boss certainly pushed the envelope in his speech. Michelle said the Teamsters boss brought in voters with him. All right, let's get to some other questions from today's show. Super chat, $20 from Bill Biz. Thank you. As a resident of Bainbridge Island for the past 17 years, the ferry system seems to be the worst that I've ever seen it. Thank Inslee for that. Yeah, except if Jay Inslee wants to leave his house on Bainbridge Island, I'm sure that they find a ferry to be on schedule for him. Elowyn Jones, first time I experienced the ferry system to go to Orcas Island was an awful ordeal. It's supposed to be the biggest ferry system in the U.S., but it's so inefficient. We actually debated this. Is it the biggest or is New York the biggest?
No, we are.
We are the biggest. Okay, I don't know why I thought it was New York. I think we've already had this debate on the show. Sergeant Pickles, it was Sergeant Pickles who emailed me that the ferry was a mess, and that's how we found out before we got up there. I waited 6 hours in total on Thursday. I'm so bummed out. I didn't know we were waiting in line at the same time. Would have said hi. Mike Hale, people living on islands and commuting should have their own boat, whether private or community paid. Tourists get the state rubbish to ride. It's a choice. The state has demonstrated they cannot operate a ferry system on time or on budget. Sorry, but do not raise the gas tax for ferry or rail systems until they can prove ability to manage such systems and projects. The next debacle is the I-5 bridge. Denise Young, $10 super chat to help with Daryl and Nicole's steak dinner. Thank you, Denise, because I asked you guys whether I can get out of the steak dinner bet because no one anticipated someone would try to kill Trump. But literally, without exception.
I guess everybody's actually been anticipating that.
Without exception, everyone on the chat is like, no, you have to make good on your bet.
I mean.
Yeah, I still have a day. I still have a day. I still have 23 hours for things to change.
Okay.
So we'll discuss tomorrow where you guys want to go. You and Daryl. What's the most expensive one? The Met?
Maybe.
Or Daniels? Like, don't do me dirty like that.
No, let's just go somewhere in Kirkland. I'm good with Kirkland.
Okay.
I don't need to go
Kirkland's
to
fine.
Seattle.
Bellevue's fine.
Maybe Bellevue.
Not this. I went to this. I'm not going to name and shame any businesses, but I thought I had an overpriced steak somewhere where I was like, that was not worth it. No, we'll take you somewhere nice. We'll take you somewhere nice, but we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, let's get to our closing sanity check, shall we? All right, so everyone is being told to lower the temperature in this country, to not say things that could incite violence against Biden or Trump for that matter. Let's check in on CNN and see how that's going, shall we? Okay.
He has said many, many times, after having been questioned many times about this, that he's not stepping down and he's going to be the nominee. So at some point, Democrats have to decide that they want to try to win this election and turn their fire on Donald Trump. I think there is... I shouldn't have said turn their fire. I apologize. That was not the phrase that I meant. They need to turn their focus on Donald Trump.
Old habits die hard. That has been your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. If you've not become a subscriber already, please do so. You can sign up for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. undividedpod.com. While you're there, you could shop our merch store in our Common Sense 2024 collection using the promo code SANITY24. That's SANITY and the number 24. You'll get 25% off. What a deal. See you back here tomorrow at noon.